Life without Rob Edwards began how life with Rob Edwards finished, with the Town losing away from home yet again. This time 2-0 at Nottingham Forest. Alongside me to look back on that game and everything that's happened in the last few days at Luton Town is the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe, and we've got Town fan Mark Crowther back with us for this episode. Gents, out of the cup, but positives to take from that.
Positives, and we can concentrate on the league now.
Exactly that. Who cares about the FA Cup?
We will concentrate on the league and all that's coming up right after this intro.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.
Hello everyone, welcome along to another episode of the Luton Town Supporters Trust podcast, the award-winning, longest-running Luton Town podcast, having scooped bronze in the Best Football League podcast category in the Football Content Awards. This season the show is in association with Solid, providing opportunities, provisions and assistance so our academy can fulfil their potential. As I mentioned before the intro, we are looking back at Notts Forest 2, Luton Town 0, and we will cover everything that's happened since we did our last podcast, which was obviously the Goodbye to Rob podcast, and I've got the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe and town fan Mark Crowther alongside me. Before we look at the game and everything, let's kind of start at where we were earlier last week, chaps. And Mark, everyone's heard my thoughts on Rob's departure and James's too. How did you feel about him leaving?
Just very, very sad that it couldn't turn it round and we couldn't get the results. I think the decision, like Gary and the board had to make a decision because of where we are and the run that we've been on. But the last couple of months shouldn't overshadow what a legend Rob is. I mean, he'll always be remembered for taking us up to the Premier League, a bit like John Still was the person that got us back in the league. But no, I mean, like what Rob's done for us and his legacy is on the back of getting promoted to the Premier League, the power court and everything else. But yeah, it's just, for me, it's very sad because as well as what he's done for us on the pitch, he's just like a nice guy off the pitch. And yeah, it's just sad, really.
Yep, sad indeed. And he was missed yesterday, actually. It felt kind of weird looking across to the touchline, not seeing him there, really, because you're just so used to it after 2 years. We'll come on to the game shortly. Since then, though, we've had the confirmed news, if I can get the words out, which we all knew was coming, that Joe Taylor left the club. That was confirmed Friday morning, although heavily rumoured on Thursday night whilst we were at the David Pleat night that the Trust did. £3 million, so reports would suggest, or upwards of, which is a decent profit for a geezer who hasn't scored a goal for us. And okay, Peterborough will take a fair chunk of that, I would imagine, judging by the way their chairman was crowing about the news. But even so, we've made money on a guy who clearly isn't rated inside the building. Then we just have to say best of luck. We know you'll do well elsewhere. It's just a shame it's not worked out here.
Exactly that. We were saying, in the last transfer window that he was on the way out the door. They were trying to get Cannon in. That didn't work. Cannon went to Stoke. Taylor stayed. We sort of knew, unless something major happened, like on his cameos, short cameos that he did have, and I appreciate that people don't think that they were very long, and that's a valid point. Unless he did something wonderful there, which he didn't, he was always going to be on his way, I think. In this window or the next, and he just wasn't favoured by Rob. I guess the question there is, and one that most people would be asking, well, Rob's not there anymore and stuff. But and you'll be right, that is true. But he has gone, and if you're going to make some money on a player that hasn't scored and has barely played, then it's the outcome we expected just about 4 months later, though.
Yeah, I don't know for sure, but I suspect that there was some sort of agreement in the summer that he would leave in January. just how it is, and they've honoured the agreement. As I say, Mark, to get £3 million for him, that's decent money in anyone's language when you consider what transfer fees Luton usually get in. You know, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine it'll rank in the top 10 incoming fees for transfers, you know, even allowing for the ones that we've sold recently. Still not too many that get sold for that. And given the fact that it's for someone who hasn't been able to make the impact that everyone wanted, no one can really argue with that deal, even though you might be disappointed that we didn't see enough of him.
No, and I think the way we play and the fact that we've got Carlton and Elijah, and Jacob Brown, he was never going to get minutes. And I think if you play to Joe Taylor's strengths, it's not the way we play. I know people will say, well, why don't we keep him until we see what the new manager wants to do? But when you've got Elijah and Carlton, just can't see a place for him. So 3 million is good business. I think we paid $500,000, didn't we? So it's good. It's good business, and we know he's going to score loads of goals in League One. So good luck to him.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you for that penalty at Wembley, and all the best at Huddersfield. We're absolutely in no doubt Joe Taylor will be scoring plenty of goals for them, because if he can do it for Lincoln at that level, he can certainly do it for a promotion-chasing side. A few hours later, Jimbo, our second incoming of the transfer window. Obviously, Christ come in earlier in the window, and we're keeping with the biblical theme because Isaiah Jones, another poorly kept secret, has to be said. This one's been doing the rounds all week. We referenced it after the QPR game. Has joined. Fee to go up to £5 million. So the media would suggest. Obviously, it was all done undisclosed fees and all that, as everything usually is. As I said after the QPR game, if we're signing him to play wide on the right, i.e. the position he played yesterday, I think is a brilliant signing. If we're signing him to play right wing back, there was no point to it. But there's progress, because immediately he's made his debut. We'll come on to how well he did in a minute, but he played in that position we wanted him to. And if that's what's going to happen, that is a really good piece of business.
Yeah, it was a very good piece of business. He's 25 in age, 25 on the shirt, and he's sort of just about to enter the prime period of most footballers' careers, and he does still fit that Luton mould of young and hungry and looking for something to prove, primarily because he hasn't really had the game time he's wanted at Borough this season, because they've had Ben Doak, who's been there ripping it up. But he's been a mainstay of certainly the Carrick teams until then. He's been there for about 5 years, I think, hasn't he? So, yeah, and Middlesbrough are always up there challenging. So he's got the sort of chops, if you like, in the Championship to suggest that if Luton can sort out the defensive issues, then forward and going forward, we've got a really good player. He's got pace. You saw that yesterday. Obviously, he had his little mazy little run, but for the goalkeeper, would have scored a great debut goal. And if it is only up to 5 million, if it's 3, if it's anything like that, that's really good business in today's day and age for a player like that. The one thing Luton are lacking at the moment, apart from the defensive issues, but in an attacking sense, is pace. You need that, and he's got some. So yeah, if that it was a decent debut. Nobody was really expecting anything entirely from the game, but if he can perform to the levels that we've seen before, then he will give something extra to Luton. And yeah, don't ever play him as a wing back. I mean, if that experiment hasn't, proved that it's not worth doing again, considering what's happened in the last week, then I don't know what is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, pace to burn. Still needs to work on his diving, doesn't he? Because there was a couple of them yesterday that the referee didn't fall for, and nor would he. Mind you, he wasn't the only one on the pitch who was doing that, let me tell you, on that side of the pitch either. I thought it was funny in his interview that he gave when the club welcomed him that he knows Amari very well, having got Amari sent off at Middlesbrough when he dived. He looks like a signing that's going to carry us up the pitch, and he's very much what we're lacking.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we're lacking the creativity, and you just want a player that offers you something different, and sort of trying to the pressing higher up the pitch, and someone with some creativity that will make other teams think, and basically you want to take other teams' defence out of their comfort zone. I think he's a player that can do that.
Yeah, he can. Yeah, probably not to judge him yesterday. Alex Moreno is a very good left back, and he was up against him. So, but against Championship left backs, I certainly saw enough yesterday to suggest that we're going to have some joy down the right hand side, which we've not really had for a while, have we? When Luton are successful, our play comes down the left hand side. If we can balance it out a wee bit, that would be so much the better. The only other thing to go through before the game started itself. There's a press conference on Friday. Jimbo was invited along. Three amigos are up there. Mick Harford, Paul Trollope, who were both involved in the team on Saturday, and Chief Executive Gary Sweet was there as well, taking most of the questions, as you would expect. How was it? How did you find it? What did you make of it?
Yeah, kind of what I expected them to say. Lots of good feeling about Edwards, and that it was a difficult decision, which I don't doubt, because he, as well as being the manager that's secured that Premier League history-making promotion and essentially Luton's future, because the money is going to go towards Power Court and all the rest of it. The feeling that he'd be classed as a legend, particularly among those that knew him, was to be expected. I think that's probably further down the line. I think a lot of people have said that. From what I've seen on social media, but then a lot of people were slagging him off for the last couple of months as well. So I think that's further down the line. I've no doubt that'll come. It happened for John Steele. So I expected that sort of stuff, and you got an insight as to what happened, and that's all cool as well. I think a large proportion of what the club does is kind of in the right way, and yeah, to get rid of a man like that, you'd want to give him the time and the space to say goodbye to everyone. So on that front, everything I kind of expected. What we really want to know then, although it's nice to know the inside track of what happened, isn't it? What you really want to know is, well, what's happening now and how's that going? And by all accounts, that started already, the process. And I think the noises were encouraging that it's not necessarily going to be a man out of work, a manager out of work. It could be a foreign one, could be an English one. The thing that I think people need to take away from it is the man that they want to get needs to have flexibility in what he's doing, because we haven't seen that largely this season, and I think they gave an account of like injuries have been a major problem with that. That's to be expected, but how many times have we had a conversation about a back three that didn't work, and then we see a back four at QPR that brings some positive encouragement, and then again at Borough, a back four again. We're still talking about defeats, let's be honest, but it's encouragement that can show that. Now, I think that'd be the first question I'd be asking a manager. I know it won't be. They'll have much more detailed questions, like you're going to play a back three or a back four, because I think most fans are sick to the back teeth of a back three, and what we've seen in the last two games is something that you could possibly build on for a new man to come in, and I think that's encouraging. So flexibility in the new manager, but now it's all about who it is. The interviews have begun, we're led to believe, and the bookies at the moment have Matt Bloomfield at the top, don't they? So, yeah, we'll wait and see on that one.
Yeah, we'll come on to the potential runners and riders once we've gone through the game. I've got to be honest, I'll take the most inflexible manager going around, as long as that inflexibility is from a back four, not a back three. Doesn't need to be flexible for me at all.
No, I mean, for me, it's like a really big decision who they take because of where we are and the position that we're in, and we've always Gary and the board have always made more decisions right than Ron in terms of getting appointments right. I think it's only Graham Jones that hasn't worked, so trust the board that they do their due diligence. But yeah, it is a really big appointment. If we get it right, then I'll see us climb the table and just like consolidate for this season. So it is as all manager appointments are, they are all crucial. But I think for where our league position is, it's it's really really vital that we get this one right.
My thoughts in the days and hours since about the manager is what constitutes getting it right, because for me,
scoring more goals than them.
obviously there'll be people screaming at me, win some games, win away, stop conceding goals, but I mean the longer term pictures, what does that mean? Because we started this season going, we're up for a promotion push, we want that, we want to get back to the Premier League. I felt more it's a couple of season period of consolidation, but at the moment it's the bar's lower than that now, because it's if whatever you do, don't slip out of this division, and then maybe a couple of years consolidation. So that was the thoughts I've had since about who that man could be, and I'd hate for that person to come in and be, not hate, that's the wrong word, but if you think back to Rob Edwards and when he came in, he took over a side that were doing okay. They weren't particularly they weren't going to get relegated. They weren't going to go up, despite what people say about Nathan Jones' team. They weren't going to go up, and he took a team and took them up. And then you referenced it in the previous podcast. He came in and said, "No, you lot can dare to dream. We're going to try and go for this." So it's a interesting message that they're going to have to come in with.
Yeah, I mean, I think a new manager, first and foremost, he's got 4 months to get the fan base on board, hasn't he? How does he do that? Well, he keeps Luton in the Championship. Simple as that. What got Nathan back on board? Keeping us in the Championship. If we'd gone down and crowds arrived, would he have got grief? Absolutely, he'd have got grief. Were crowds around when Nathan came back? What would have stopped the grief that he was getting? Would have been to keep us in the Championship. So that's the first aim that a new manager's got to do. He's just got to keep us in the Championship. I really don't think it should be that difficult. Yes, we're absolutely in a relegation battle. There is no doubt about that. The league table will tell you that. But by the same token, these players have underperformed for the last 2-3 months. You get these players performing to the level they should do. This ain't a 20th in the Championship squad. I refuse to believe it is. Is it a second in the Championship squad? No, absolutely not. It's somewhere well in the middle. But that's fine. We'll take well in the middle from where we are right now. You've literally just got to come in, lift the players' confidence up. We've seen a formation that works. Hell, we all knew that this formation was going to work for the players that they'd recruited. It's almost like they recruited for this formation at the start of the season when you think of who the key players in that formation so recently have been. Liam Walsh's, Mark McGuinness, Zach Nelson was already here, but they're and Lamine Fanner, they're the four that have been sort of key to it. So it's been recruited for. So why? I don't necessarily buy injuries. Joe Johnson has never seemed to let us down when he's played. Never even tried him. I'm more of a try and fail than not try and make excuses kind of man. And that was the only criticism I had of Rob. He didn't try until it was too late. And obviously it was too late because we played perfectly well at QPR and he still lost his job. So that's the first thing that a new manager needs to do. Then, do we need 2 seasons of consolidation? Not sure we do. I'm not sure that a parachute payment club, admittedly not all of the parachute payments will be going on the squad and things, but I don't think a parachute payment club should be looking at consolidation for first and second season. I think we should be pushing for promotion next season. Not automatically, but Luton should be where we were the last 2 seasons that we were in the Championship, for me.
Well, yeah, I mean, I should clarify, I did think that they'd get in the playoffs. That was what I was saying. But I think then when you're in the playoffs, you're in the lap of the gods, aren't you? It's luck of the draw, and probably the team that's on form and who gets the luck of. We've won one now, so we sort of know the formula, but we've lost a hell of a lot as well. So there's difficult. So yeah, but when I say consolidation, I meant that you want to be up there challenging. But if it was couple of seasons in there, then yeah, I wouldn't mind. The Premier League season was really good and it was fun, but we did lose a lot of games, and that is not fun. When you go up the first time, it's a novelty. If we go up a second time, yeah, there's lessons to be learned, but all the teams that went up this season are showing how difficult it is nowadays, when Burnley, Luton and Sheffield United were all getting pelters from everybody saying it's the worst crop that's ever come up. Well, it ain't, is it? Because look at the league table now in the Premier League. So it's very difficult to go up, and that's the long-term goal and long-term aim of the sustainability aspect of Power Core and the academy of developing your own players to try and compete. So while we're in that sort of limbo period until that starts and then beds in, I think this well feasible that that might be like the outlook, but they won't say that, of course, and that's to their credit. They'll want the ambition of going back up. I'm just sort of thinking realistically.
And also, Mark, I think I'm also a believer that if you finish the season well, chances are you start the next season well. That's perfectly the case this season here. We finished last season terribly, and the hangover carried over into this season. And if you think 2 seasons ago when we made the playoffs, and then we built on that, so if we stay up and we finish this season well, which will be difficult because late March, April are tough months in terms of the fixture list. But hey, if this side is performing with a bit of confidence, we shouldn't really fear anyone outside the top 4 in this division. They're all much of a muchness. If we can finish this season well, there's no reason why we can't hit the ground running next season with a summer transfer window behind us where much more movement is likely to happen. I think the board have said that they want to do business in this window, but we're all cautious of how much they can do because of the January window. Mick said as much in that press conference on Friday. But there's no reason why a strong finish to this season can't set us up nicely for next season.
It does give you momentum, not only from a point of view of a feel-good factor in the club, but also, like I said, in the transfer window. So if we've got players, if we finish really strongly, like say a top 10, and then other clubs are looking at our better players, you think of Alfie Doherty, Thomas Kaminski, but if we're strong at the end, as opposed to just like languishing near the bottom, but we stay up. It's encouragement to keep the players that we want to keep, but also attracting new players for next season, because we can go to these new players and say we're going to have a push and we're going to go for it next season. So it's just like it's just like it'll give us momentum, and don't forget the new manager, whoever he is only going to have a couple of months to work with it, and then the summer is where he'll get to spend a lot more time with the players that he wants, but also just get to spend that time, because as we know, during a busy championship season, there isn't much time to do work on the training ground.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah. Although we have now got a free Saturday spare in February, because the Plymouth game is going to be moved to midweek. They'll enjoy that journey, won't they, midweek? We did it on a Friday night, so what goes around comes around. Yeah, Plymouth won in the FA Cup, and they're that means that the home game against Plymouth will be postponed and rescheduled. Let's come on to the FA Cup game. I should just say before we go on to the Cup, the press conference is free on the LTFC Plus thing on the website, but if you can't be bothered to sit through 55 minutes of talk, then Jimbo's wrote most of it up on the Lutonian website. There you go. I'll get a plug in for you as to appease you. No one really cared about yesterday in terms of, the league's much more important than the Cup. They didn't care about yesterday. They made 11 changes. It was blatantly obvious that they didn't care about yesterday. And largely, once the first goal went in, we could all have gone home, because although we huffed and puffed, we never really looked like scoring, and they just wanted the game to finish, didn't they? I have absolutely no idea why they brought all the big guns on at 2-0. That made no sense to me at all. In fact, there wasn't much of the day that did make much sense to me yesterday. Good to have Mickey Harford in the dugout. That was one thing. Only one change for Luton, though. Were you surprised at that?
Yes and no. I mean, I went into the game quite fearful. Obviously, the confidence was low, and the run that we'd been on away from home, and we're going to a team that's second in the Premier League. I don't know how, but they are. And so, I thought there would be changes, but to that extent, we haven't got a game for a week. We're not in the middle of a 3-game week. So, I was surprised that Isaiah Jones started, made his debut. But it was a strong team, and I think it just proved that we were taking it seriously, and we knew how difficult the task was going to be. But I think there were positives to take out the game, and like you look at some other big scores in the FA Cup, I felt we competed without sort of having that quality to basically hurt them. But it was a strong team, and I think there's about was there 1,000 Luton fans that went up, so it's a big commitment from us, and it was quite cold.
Isn't that the word? Yeah. I didn't actually catch the away figure, but it looked like there was a good 1,500 in there, and huge support again. You know, that's 11 away. Although no one really cared yesterday, that's 11 away defeats on the trot now, and it's, you know, I mean, you know, you have to go back quite a long time for the last time that we got that win at Millwall. You know, we're closing in on 4 months now, and that is a long time. There were positives to take from it though, but it just shows how strong Forest squad is. I know they've brought 5 million players in the last 2 transfer windows, but James Ward-Prowse just jumped off the team sheet. They've made 11 changes, and he is arguably the most technically gifted midfielder in the Premier League from a dead ball. Coming into the side, and it's from a recycled dead ball that they opened the score in. But before we get onto all of that, their squad is strong. But if Chris Wood gets injured for them, they are in serious trouble, because the cart horse they had up front couldn't hit a cow's ass with a banjo, I tell you.
I couldn't care less if he got injured or not. I mean, yeah, good luck to them. And it's quite a remarkable turnaround. You have to hold your hands up and give that to them, that the trajectory of the two clubs, you know, them going from a relegation battle, which in the end they were ultimately safe from, and we weren't. So hands up, fair play to them there. And then going on to be, there's unless something goes wrong, they're sort of on course for at least the Champions League. I know they'll be looking at the Tuesday game against Liverpool, that if they win that, they can maybe crowbar themselves into the title race. And I suppose that's not out of the question, because they're the only team that's beaten Liverpool this season in the league. But you know, as far as what they're getting up to, can give them monkeys. I just like, I mean, when Luton play Forest in cup competitions, we pretty much always lose to them. So
you don't need to bring up things like 1989. There's just no need for it.
But nobody expects to go up there winning, because, and if you did, I want a pint of what you're drinking, because the last 10 games before that hadn't suggested a great deal that there was any chance of getting anything. And with a team that's high flying like they were, then equally so. So, but like I say, the FA Cup, it's nice to go on a run when you're okay in the league or going well. But when you're in this situation you're in now, to get out of it. It's no benefit to us. We've gone up to the Premier League. That's where the money is now. We come back down. We don't need a cup run. There's no replays anyway, and Tamworth got mugged off against Spurs. So it's like, you know, whatever. Get out of it and let's concentrate on the bread and butter, which is Preston, and then the rest of this survival season.
Doesn't listen to a word I say off camera, does he? Don't need a cup run that involves going to Exeter, so enjoy that in the next round. That's for sure. Big positive, we stuck with this back 4 formation. We've been crying out for it for a long time on this podcast. You'll have heard us say it undoubtedly, Mark, and it just works. Now, defensively on Monday, it didn't work. For the first half an hour, we looked all over the gaff, and for the last half an hour, we looked all over the gaff. Yesterday, though, that didn't strike you as the case. We were a lot more organised. I know they've scored from a cross into the box and a free header, but that was really the only time I can think of them them threatening from a cross. Most of their other ones just came from good, skillful play out wide.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell what a quality players they have just by the passing, the movement, and players of that ability can find the space, sometimes where there isn't a space. But in terms of actual chances, they weren't. I mean, Thomas Kaminski wasn't overworked. He had a few things to do, but you wouldn't say like QPR where they could have had 6. The chances they created were very limited, albeit we weren't creating much either.
No, that's right. I think they had 3 shots on target, so 2 of them were the goal, and I'm assuming the other one was the Ward-Prowse free kick that somehow made its way through, which he just about managed to fall on before it went over the line. I can't remember any other shots on target, so I'm assuming that was it. But it was us that had the first chance. I say chance, it wasn't a chance, but the first shot on target, when the ball came out to Liam Walsh 30 yards away, he kind of shimmied inside and hit a shot that, had they not have had Jack and the Giant Beanstalk in goal, would definitely have gone in. But the fact that they had this Inspector Gadget like geezer, he must be 7 foot if he's an inch. I mean, he ain't even got a stretch to touch the crossbar. This boy pushes it over the top. When he hit it, Walsh, I thought, cool, that's got a chance. And then I forgot, size of the goalkeeper. But he made a good save. It was a save for the cameras, but it was encouragement, because what have we been calling for a lot on this podcast? Luton shooting from outside the penalty box, and lo and behold, we let fly and get a corner from it.
Yeah, and I think Liam Walsh from what we've seen in those two performances since he's come back have been encouraging. And I do also see a lot of people sort of saying he was terrible, which I don't get. And maybe that's a symptom of his disciplinary problems since he's come to the club. And you know, lots of people wanted him out, was the phrase they were saying, get him out. But, you know, he's a quality footballer with the ball at his feet. And, you know, he can open up defences, but equally he can just keep the midfield ticking along. And there's so many times this season where we haven't really even had a midfield, even though they've been there on the pitch, but they've been bypassed or outnumbered. And so for somebody to come in and do that is just rare to see in this particular season. But when you get him alongside Marvellous Nakamba, who does the obvious dirty work and then can give it to a player like him, who won't be far away from him, but then can spread the play, really quite good. I mean, and if he can add a few goals or a few shots from outside the box, which we don't see very often because confidence is low. We've seen positions where people have got in there. I can remember a couple from Clark and Morris where they've taken an extra touch and the chance has particularly gone. So, yeah, all encouraging signs that if the new guy can get a tune out of this team, then that it's not all doom and gloom at the moment.
Oh, it's absolutely not all doom and gloom. Now that I've seen this formation twice, I was encouraged by it after QPR. When you consider who Notts Forest are, it doesn't matter who the 11 are on the pitch. They've got an organisation within them that we don't have. The structure of the team doesn't change. They don't give anything away. They're very organised. They sit very deep. They take away all the spaces that attacking teams like to take, and then they'll pounce on the counter-attack. They'll play it into, well, presumably it'll be Wood normally, but A1 Inui, or however you pronounce his name, yesterday. And then from there, runners go everywhere, which is exactly the same way Luton are trying to play into Morris, with runners off of him. Couldn't happen yesterday because centre-half's just too dominant, but in terms of where we are and how we are, we just look so much better in this formation. Liam Walsh let fly from miles out. So did Ryan Yates. Now, when that left his foot, I was cheering because I thought it was going miles over the crossbar, and I got a shock of my life when that dipped and hit the top of the crossbar. Thankfully, it hit the top of the crossbar. But people around me heard me like cheering that it was going miles wide. They were like, "Oh, you went a bit early there, didn't you?" I was like, "Yeah, got the fright of my life when I had the clunk of that hitting the crossbar." But thank God it did, because Kaminsky was waving that goodbye.
Another thing about the game is if you look at the two teams, confidence levels, you couldn't get more opposite. One team's flying, second in the Premier League, and obviously confidence is low for the run that we've been on. So the way that we competed, bear in mind where the confidence was, it's a big positive. There were positives to take out the game, and I was sort of sat just in front of you, and I was the same. That's going nowhere near, and then
Boink.
Thomas Kaminsky thought it was going nowhere because he just left it. But yeah, no, there were positives to take from the game. It must have been icy in our box, the amount of Forest players that were falling over.
I'm glad you went down that route, because I mean, I was going to go down that route. I'm not going to lie to you. Sosa in particular, I mean, like you say, the undersoil heating must have been on, because he could not cuddle that grass quickly enough in that first 10 minutes. There was 2 dives right in front of Mark and I. No one anywhere near him. I mean, even the Russian judge weren't even going to give that a mark. It was so obvious. It was just ridiculous. As I say, Isaiah Jones did exactly the same thing going the other way. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander and all of that. But, I mean, Jesus. On one side, you had a poor man's Jack Grealish with his socks down and everything else, and then on the other side you had Jack Grealish, the diving version. It was like they've split the two up and put them on opposite flanks. Then came the Isaiah Jones run. Really good move, actually. Morris does really, really well to muscle the centre half. Couldn't see which one of the two it was, but muscled him out of the way. Got the ball back into Isaiah Jones, who goes on a mazy little run. Zach Nelson does a really nice block to stop the other centre half from tackling him. He gets through. I just think the goalie was on him a little bit too quick, wasn't he? If the goalkeeper didn't recognise it, then I think Jones would have dinked it, or he would have put his left foot through it. He tried to lift it with his right foot, didn't he? But they're the signs that Luton haven't had. When was the last time a Luton player ran into the box with the ball and had control of it like that? I mean, Tahith Chong's capable of doing it, but we've not really seen him do it. But that was really, really encouraging.
That was it, really. It's a player that's got confidence and is is unbowed by what's happened to the rest of the Luton squad this term. Yeah, we haven't seen that enough from many people. We saw signs of it against QPR when Zach Nelson and Heath Chong were driving at defences like we hadn't seen for a very long time. Well, we know they can do it, but particularly Chong. That's what we were the Chong we were expecting at the start of the season. I mean, to be fair, you can't really do that too much when you're playing left wing back and stuff. But when you're playing in the right position, yeah. But that's just refreshing to see, isn't it? Because if he's not going to come with any of the baggage that the rest of them have at the moment. Middlesbrough relatively flying, usually do okay anyway. And to come in and a run like that is it's good signs.
Yep, liked what I saw from him. Faded in the second half, but that's understandable. Hasn't played much football for Middlesbrough recently. One training session at Luton. Probably still didn't know who half of the people were. We'll see a lot more from Isaiah Jones of that, I'm absolutely certain. Shame we couldn't get in at half-time 0-0, because I didn't think the game was going anywhere when they did score. But as I said, a set piece was recycled out wide to my friend Sosa, who for the first time all afternoon decided to stay on his feet and put a cross in, which annoyingly all of our defence weren't expecting, because they were expecting him to fall over, no doubt. And Ryan Yates unfortunately was, and got in front of, I think he got in front of Rue Waters, and sorry, not Rue Waters, Amari Bell, and found the bottom corner, unfortunately.
Yeah, just unfortunate. We've had this season like the timings of the goals that we can, not just the goals we concede, but the timings of them, either just before half time, just after half time, and you can imagine that going in at 0-0 as opposed to conceding late in the first half changed the team talk from Trolls and Mick. So yeah, it was just frustrating because it was a fairly even game. Yes, they had the possession. Yes, they had the pressing and the movement, and they were finding spaces. But the shape of the back four meant that we didn't feel like we were being overrun.
Yep, shape of the back four. One or two of their passes to their wingers. I don't know if they were expecting Usain Bolt to be on the end of them, but they were miles away from their wingers. Unfortunately, that is a disease that we really need to stop over the second half of this season. Is these goals before and straight after half-time. They're the ones that really kill us the most. Second half, hard to judge us in the second half because we had to make a change after about 3 minutes when Lamine Fano went off. Probably wasn't having the impact that he had at QPR, but again, he's up against much more stronger footballers. I just referenced that James Ward-Prowse was in their midfield. Ryan Yates is a pretty decent Premier League player as well, and of course the centre-halves were giving no joy either. Potential ankle injury from what we're hearing as well. Let's hope that's not too bad because we really don't need to be missing him for any period of time. Jordan Clark came on for him. Spent the first 5 minutes passing to the crowd or Nottingham Forest players, but thankfully he got up to speed relatively quickly. Of course, we're 1-0 down at this point. We're ducking and diving with formations and things like that. Maybe a little too early, but, again, rather it be too early than too late. And again, we looked like we were just starting to get ourselves back into the game, and then Wallop, second one, comes along, a loose ball in their half of the pitch. I'll give the midfielder a little bit of credit. I think it was Yates. I'll give him a bit of credit that he's picked out the poor man's Jack Grealish down the right-hand side. He's gone on a little gallop, got into the box. Walters and my mate Sosa have gone in a race. Sosa's just got in front of him and again annoyingly stayed on his feet long enough to put the ball in the bottom corner. And from there onwards, let's all toddle off home. There's no coming back from this.
Yeah, but how many times has that happened in the season? That and it happened last season as well. Goals at crucial times, and maybe give Forest some credit. That's what part of what being a top flight side is, like putting the pressure on or taking chances at those crucial moments and putting games to bed. But it's happened in the Championship a lot this season as well. So it's a Luton problem as well. Conceding just before half-time, conceding just after, and then as with that goal, when you're sort of just thinking you might be getting into a game, that's happened at QPR. You get hit by a goal, whether it's a well-taken goal, as it was in this case, or a sucker punch fluke like it was at QPR. Same effect, but it just kills the momentum. So, while we're talking about positive stuff, and even if you want to credit some of the defenders for some of the defensive work, the number of goals conceded does not lie, and you can't go into any game in football, hoping to win it if you concede in 2-3 times a game. So the new manager that's come in, hopefully is going to like a back four, and then has got to get that back four to be much more watertight than they have been for, a whole calendar year or more, because it's not good enough. And that ultimately is where the slide is, because, until the last month, we were good for a goal. The goals were coming. But even so, still losing. So where's the problem there? Quite clearly it's in defence. We know this. That's a major fix for the new guy.
Yeah, and another reason why I think we'll get out of this, I refuse to believe there isn't a manager out there who can sort this defence out as much of a basket case as it's been for the last 12 months. Last thing you need when the second goal goes in is to look over to the left-hand side and see 4 giants of Nottingham Forest coming onto the pitch. Why on earth are they bringing them on at 2-0? You've got Liverpool on Tuesday. Sit them back down again. Game will peter out. We're all good. You can have your 2-0 win, not a problem. But no, Hudson-Odoi came on, Alanga came on, Wood came on, and I can't even remember the other one that they brought on, but he was half decent as well. And then later on in the piece, the fella who they were singing about all afternoon about being indestructible, Danilo, or I thought it was Danny Lowe at the first point, but Danilo, he comes on as well. I checked my notes and he's been out for 5 months with a broken ankle, so quite how he's indestructible, I don't know, but I'm just, hey, listen, it's not the first song that they've sung that's baffled me over the last couple of years, has it? And I got 2 more renditions of that in January yesterday as well. But to our credit, even though they brought on all the big guns in that time, we probably had our best passage of play, certainly from a potential scoring point of view. We had one, didn't we, where Tom Holmes has flicked on some sort of set piece. It's been flicked on to Tom Holmes, who's headed it back across goal. Someone's got on the line to head it away. Carlton Morris had a header that the goalkeeper saved. And there was 1 or 2 sort of pinballs around the box that didn't quite go our way. On another day, we could have scored 1, and you only have to think back to the last season there, that if 1 had gone in, a second one we'd have fancied our chances in front of the Luton fans.
Maybe that will explain their substitutions. They were thinking of last season and being 2-0 up and coasting.
Where was Joe Worrell, lads? That's all we needed. Just bring him on. I know he's at Burnley before anyone comes at me.
But I thought Jordan Clark was really impressive when he came on. Everything we were creating was coming down the left side, and he just looked really sharp. We created some chances, and then there's the non-penalty for, putting it kindly, to say that it was an aggressive challenge by the keeper that took Mark McGuinness out. It was anywhere else on the pitch. Not only is it a foul, but it's a sending off. And if you see that on a Saturday night, then you marched off to the cell. So
if there's a tall enough policeman to march him off to the cells, you haven't seen this, but if Daniel Dubois catches Usyk with a right hook like this, then Dubois will do what he said after the Fury fight and knock him out. He was absolutely bang. I mean, you could hear the punch, couldn't you, from where we were? It was like a firework going off. Unbelievable. It's exactly like that Norwich incident away, where the goalkeeper collides with Elijah Adebayo, only this time it is like Mark says, it's a punch. He's gone to punch the ball. He might have got something on the ball, I don't know, but he definitely got the jaw of Mark McGuinness. I mean, he's got a strong chin not to be knocked out by that, to be fair, because it was a right old clonk that he took. The only thing that disappointed me about it, not as well as the non-decision, no one really appealed for it. I'd start being nasty town and appeal, That's the other way round. Full well that you've got 8 red shirts around the referee.
And to add insult to injury, after Mark McGuinness had treatment, to restart the game, the referee gave the ball back to the keeper.
I know, yeah. Drop ball. Crack on. I mean, the only bad thing for the keeper, he's got to bend down about 12 feet to pick the thing up again. But you're like, do us a favour. Someone had already smacked the ball to the halfway line by the time the referee had realised that we'd had a knockout punch in the penalty box. Hey, he wasn't the greatest, was he, the referee? But, thankfully there was... Well, one time we could have done with VAR. Well, twice, really. Could have done with it at QPR, couldn't we, last week? We didn't get it. But there were signs. We nearly scored. Nearly's not good enough, of course. But when you take into account the quality of the club that we were up against, as you've both rightly pointed out, they're riding high in the Premier League. Let's not give them too much credit. They're 3rd in the Premier League, not 2nd, right? You've been too kind to them already in this podcast.
They're joint on points.
No, they're 3rd. They're 3rd. it's encouraging still. 6 shots on target yesterday. That's an improvement from the QPR game where it was 4 shots on target. Okay, not as many shots, but you're going away to a Premier League club. If you're expecting as many shots you get at QPR, I'll have a pint of that as well. And we're on this run, aren't we, where we're trying to build on what's gone before, and hopefully we get to a level where it's sustainable and bringing results. So that is an upgrade on what we saw at QPR, 6 shots on target.
Yeah, and there were a couple of decent openings. The cross at the end was to Morris, a header. He's got his head on it. Obviously you would say you've got to hit the target. The strikers aren't free scoring at the moment, so there's going to have to be a point where it happens like for every striker that one goes in, and then maybe they get on a run. But they can't do that without the service, and that had been the case for a lot of the previous recent games, at least anyway. And so just to see that the service is there and it coming from the flanks, which has previously been such an important weapon for Luton, then it's a good sign. Of course you'd want the goals, and you can't get nothing, and we won't get nothing positive out of this situation if we don't start scoring them. But you can't win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket.
No, you can't. There's plenty of Premier League teams that haven't scored against that lot this season, so why would Luton Town automatically going to do it? 3 things that I picked out. Matt Aquino on Twitter has picked out for me. I would have looked at these stats, but he's kindly posted them on his own Twitter feed. Highest pass completion rate in a game this season, 83%, so 5 passes in every 6 found their target. Most passes completed in game this season, 427. That bodes well for the possession-based thing that this formation is there to do. And fewest long passes attempted in a game this season, 51, which tells us that we're playing through the lines an awful lot more. The eyes are telling you this formation is working. We just need to put the finishing touches onto it now.
And when the confidence comes and we get results and the momentum, and we talked about the defence, but it's not just the 4 or 5 that are at the back. A lot of the time we've been overrun in midfield. So when you get Walsh back, Krause was on the bench, and you got Nakamba, Clark looked really sharp yesterday. So like stopping teams overrunning us in midfield and like putting pressure on the defence, then we get all that sorted out, which is more solid with the back 4. Then and then we start creating the chances with Isaiah Jones. He'll give us something extra along with Chon. Then we can take positives.
Yep, building blocks are in place, that's for sure, and hopefully with another week working on it, hopefully with a new man at the helm, by the time Preston come down here, we can build on even further and get 3 points, start pulling away from the relegation zone. Yeah, I thought you were right. Liam Walsh was really, really good yesterday. This formation really does suit him. He's starting to take the ball off the centre halves now, which is good. Rather, as I pointed out there, rather than aimless balls up to Carlton and Elijah that they can't do anything with other than chase off afterwards. We've got a lot more control in games. Just in 2 games, we've had more control in them when we've had the ball. That is, rather than just giving it away straight away.
And that's why you can see why they went for him. He was a free agent and stuff. The only mark against him at the point that they signed him was the injury record. Now, how many players Luton signed with a bad injury record? And we now know that the signing of Walsh and Baptiste was hopefully with the fingers crossed assumption, admittedly, that if one of them was injured, the other one would be available. But then they were both injured at the same time or suspended, and that was a problem. But you can see he's got quality on the ball. He was brought up in the Everton Academy. He played for Swansea. Not as many games as you'd like to, of course, but they don't sign players that, as we've seen twice this season and in recent weeks, they don't give the ball away a lot. And Swansea have been like that for years under numerous managers. That's their style. You've got to be able to handle the ball very well. So you've got a good player there if you can get him playing and keep him free from injuries. And the added thing now is to tell him not to jump in 2-footed at people, which he seems to have taken on board for these 2 games at least. So, yeah, it does bode well for the possession-based football, which was the order of the day at the start of the season. We were told this from Edwards. That's what he wanted to transition into, and then it wasn't working. Sort of changed it a bit, which worked for a little bit, but not away. And then, muddled thinking. Players not available, injuries, all went into the melting pot of this situation, which unfortunately has lost Robbie's job, and it would be a case of what could have been if it goes right.
Yeah, indeed. Yep. If only we'd changed this formation a little bit earlier. Who knows what would have happened. More players are in the areas of the pitch where we need them, and I mean, I was watching the Man United game earlier, and they were playing 3-4-3, which was the formation we finished playing once we obviously we were chasing the game by that point. We went into a 3-4-3, and the amount of passes that the United centre backs were doing, because there was only two in the centre of midfield. I was sitting there and I'm thinking, Christ, I've watched this movie loads of times this season. I know exactly how this one plays out. You'll lose the ball in a minute in a key area of the pitch and they'll swamp you. And lo and behold, that's what happened for Arsenal's equaliser.
And I looked at the stats for the QPR game afterwards. Who cares about the stats for the Forest game? But the stats were saying that the players that had the most touches and made the most passes out of the Luton team were all the defenders and Liam Walsh. Now, I think I said it on this podcast. So I'm not particularly it's the peppification of football, isn't it? Where the defenders have the most touches when clearly they're the least talented. Otherwise, they wouldn't be defenders. No disrespect. They don't have that ability by and large, unless you're Trent Alexander to cut open a team with an incisive ball. So it makes more sense to give it to the players that can play with it. And he was there showing that on the game. He came back after that suspension, when he'd written a statement, everybody said he's going to try his hardest to try and effectively win people back around, and you can only do that by playing well, and that's what he's shown in these two games, I think.
Yep, still a few kind of holes in that formation that we could either strengthen or tweak or whatever the word is. It still doesn't look completely great at left back. Amari's been given a bit of a run around. That might be that he's still finding his feet after an extended injury. And that 10 position, we've still not nailed that down either, but that'll come the more that we play it. Maybe even the left wing position. I like Zach there. I just wonder if you could find someone else on the left wing and put Zach in that 10 position, if that would work. I hope Zach's okay. It looked like he was very dazed when he went off yesterday. He seemed to take an elbow around the back of the head, and not too sure it was accidental either, I have to say. But yeah, that's pretty much it. We're out of the cup. To be fair, I've had tea bags last longer in the cup than what we did at both cups actually this season. But we've got bigger fish to fry, and that's absolutely fine. Who could be frying them though? Let's have a little look at. Well, we've moved on a little bit from Thursday when we recorded the Goodbye Rob podcast. We've kind of got a little bit more information out that's out there, really. Nothing that's been directly given to us. Obviously, you sat and listened to Gary in a press conference. He answered plenty of questions about what the new man could be and could entail. Paul Trollope pretty much admitted that his remit was to take the game yesterday, and that's it. So we're expecting a new manager before Preston, based on that evidence. Bookmakers have now put a market up. They're firmly in the camp that Matt Bloomfield is the odds-on favourite. I should stress these bookmaker markets for managers are not always right. For example, Jose Mourinho was the odds-on favourite to be the Everton manager, and unless he's had a complete makeover, he's changed into David Moyes. That's just a recent example. But there's an awful lot of talk doing the rounds about Bloomfield, and of course there is. He's only down the road. Three Counties were obviously asking him after their cup game on Friday night, what's the deal? And he'll be a good cricketer because he gave a straight bat to everything. But it's a natural one because he fits the profile of the former coaches that we've gone for, as in young, point to prove, up and coming, etc., etc. We said on the last podcast we don't see it as that kind of role at the moment. We see it as a championship steady Eddie, if you like, for the want of a better phrase. But bookmakers think that he's the man.
Yeah, well, this phrase that the bookmakers are rarely wrong it's probably true in the top division, but when you get down to the lower leagues, I'm not sure they are, because I can't recall, certainly in the last 3 appointments, where the bookmakers' favourite for the Luton job has been given the Luton job. But that's not to say that Matt Bloomfield might not be in the running. But then I listened to the interview he did with Three Counties, and he's either playing it with a straight bat, as you say, or was being very economical to truth. Because
one thing's for sure, he didn't miss his media training course. That is for sure.
No, but if he's got a game on the Saturday and he's preparing the team presumably on the Friday, if they're having interviews on the Sunday, it would strike me as very odd that he'd only have heard about it via people that sent him links about it. Do you know what I mean? Now that could all be subterfuge, of course it could, but I don't know. No, I wouldn't be against it. It does fit the profile. There's a very interesting piece from Matt Bloomfield on his philosophy of coaching, which I won't go into now, but we'll put it in the show notes. It's a decent read.
It involves a back four.
It involves a back four, fast flowing football, ability to be flexible, which is one of the key components here. All the stuff that you want. It's and he's doing well with the Wickham side at the moment, albeit in League One. But then Edwards came from League Two, didn't it? Bar the 11-day stop off in Watford, but he'd won the title with Forest Green, didn't he? So that doesn't sort of discount you. That shouldn't discount you really. But yeah, it's one that's getting put about because I think of his season that he is having with Wickham, it's been very good. If it is him, then I don't think many people would be disheartened. I think most people are looking at it and seeing who's out of work as well, and seeing Steve Cooper, for instance, and it's understandable that people would talk about Steve Cooper because he took Nottingham Forest side who were knocking around the relegation zone in the Championship and got them up to the Premier League, and I don't think he'd be in the running, to be honest.
Bookmakers do though. He's the joint second favourite for the role. Yeah, just on Bloomfield, if we're led to believe that interviews are taking place as we speak, that's a quick turnaround for compensation to be agreed and everything else. It does suggest to me that maybe the manager is out of work, which unfortunately would go against my Liam Rosenior shout, unless they've rang him up and got told no joy, which I suspect probably hasn't happened. But yeah, Cooper joint second favourite alongside Stephen Schumacher, both out of work, so they would tick that box. Both had their successes as a manager. Cooper obviously had his success at Forest. Probably can't judge him on Leicester because he was tainted because of his role at Forest. Decent enough at Swansea in this division as well, Cooper. Schumacher took Plymouth to this level. Let's not judge him on Stoke. They're all basket cases that go in there, as we know from experience of someone who left us. But they're out of work, so they would be easy enough to employ if they're the man that they want.
Yeah, and I'm all for, yes, we need somebody in, we need a manager soon, but I would rather get the decision right. I mean, I'm like you. I would love to see Liam Rosenior there. He's proven it in the Championship. He got Hull to 6th before they sacked him. Still didn't get that one. And I believe he was the brains behind what was happening at Derby. He plays attacking football. He plays the right way, and like I said, I would rather wait to get the right man. But it might be that avenue's been blocked. I mean, other names are like Gary O'Neill, but I think managers that have just been released by their clubs will probably be under compensation clauses that they can't work for X amount of time, and would he want to go straight back in or take a break? So I don't think Gary Neal is, and I don't think Steve Cooper's our type of, like a Luton type of manager. We go, like you said, we go for the progressive managers that are like just sort of starting to make an impact in the game. So I think realistically Bloomfield or Schumacher would probably be the names I would think, although I'm just keeping everything crossed for Liam Rosenior.
I've never seen Cooper as an option. We briefly discussed him in the last podcast. Something, I can't put my finger on what it is, but there's something that doesn't really resonate. The character of Rosenior would just be so good for this football club. I'm absolutely certain of that. And he's perfectly good at operating under strict budgets, long-term plans, literally everything that was written in them programme notes for the Norwich game. You could almost have been writing them about him. It's untrue, but that's where we are. Fifth. I've got to cover it again. I'm afraid fifth favourite in this betting market is a certain N Jones.
I don't think it would happen, but then again, I was there sat on a Zoom in COVID when they announced the new manager, and it was Nathan Jones for a second spell. So I was surprised then, and I'd be surprised again now. So it's not out of the possibility, but I can't see it.
Neil Harris is another one that's quite high up in the betting market. Now, if we employ him, I'd rather have Rolf Harris in charge. I mean, it's like his style of football. I sat there at Millwall thinking, how the hell do you watch this every week?
Surely the betting markets haven't got to have a lot of names to get people to bet. So, right, we've got to find 12 names to put on that might be the Luton manager, and they'll probably come up with...
Well, they do, but they, like you say, they do have to convince them to bet. I mean, you know, they've got to be semi-realistic. I just don't see Luton employing a long ball merchant.
Who's betting on Neil Harris though? Is that he's a supposed Millwall legend, so he goes to Millwall and they like him, but there's no love lost between the two sides, although not as much as Sky likes to make out by putting fixtures against Millwall at midday every time. But, you know, it's 40 years ago, lads, but you know, give it a rest. But I don't see that there's enough in what he's shown as a manager to be on that list, other than he's out of work, I suppose.
Well, there is that. Next is the man that you decided that you wanted in the last podcast, Alan Sheehan. Kind of covered that then. Don't see this as a role for a first job person. Russell Martin's on this list as well, quite high up in the betting. I think he'd, as much as I'm all for not playing long ball and playing a back four, I'm not sure I could handle his amount of passing, to be honest.
No, and I think if there's any logic to what I said, he comes under the same category as Gary O'Neill, that is probably on a compensation clause that he's not allowed to work, or he has to give his compensation back.
Also, if you want another man that's completely inflexible, then Russell Martin is your man, because he will only clearly play one way, to the detriment of the fact he got his job at Southampton taken away from him, and clearly they can't play around at the back.
It would be interesting trying to see Thomas Kaminski doing that, though, wouldn't it? To be fair, I mean, bloke panics every time the ball comes near him, near his feet. The other ones on this market to mention are David Wagner, Sean Dyche, who wasn't available when we recorded that podcast, even though he was by the time it went out, and well, we mentioned it the other day, but you know he's there. Neil Lennon.
Yeah,
someone did say to me in reaction to the podcast, John Lennon would be more appropriate, but you know, I can't argue. It's not my cup of tea.
Yeah, imagine.
Boom, boom.
Yeah. Just imagine that. Imagine if he came into Luton. I mean, it's
of all the people.
Yeah.
Don't think John Lennon's coming into Luton somehow. Might be wrong. I hope Neil Lennon isn't either, but I probably should say that quietly just in case the world works in mysterious ways.
No, I can't see it. I don't know.
Wagner or Dyche?
I could see Wagner more than Dyche. I think the Dyche connection is obviously he's played for Luton. He's also played and managed the other lot down the road. But that hasn't stopped anyone, but he's done an awful lot more than the 11 games that Edwards did there.
I mean, it would be peak Luton to take a geezer who we beat twice and drew with the other time last season when we barely won a game at all.
Yeah, well, he might get a tune out of Elijah Adebayo, because the rumours were that he wanted him at Everton, didn't he? But I can't see that one, purely because he gave a very long interview. I think it was to Jimmy Bullard.
That was a meeting of the minds, wasn't it?
I think it was to him. Maybe I've got that wrong, but he was sort of sat in a deck chair, I think, somewhere, doing an interview about his next job, who it would be.
Have you dreamt this?
I very well may have. I may have eaten something dodgy. I may have drunk far too much, but I'm sure he was out there talking to somebody, sat in something like a deck chair, saying his next job
in Liverpool. What was he doing? What was he doing in one of them? We've been pitting down a rain.
He wasn't in Liverpool at the time. He was between the Burnley and the Everton jobs, and he was saying he wanted to hold out for a big job, and he was quite happy to bide his time.
And then he went to Everton.
I'd be very surprised, but listen, he did the business at Burnley. In
Can
this
you watch
division,
his football though? Is the question. I mean,
That is the question,
what
isn't
you
it?
got told in that press conference was the style of play. There was a lot of talk about the style of play and everything else, wasn't there? You can't really talk about a style of play and then go and employ Sean Dyche, can you? Because there isn't one. Well, there is, but it's not particularly watchable.
Well, yeah, we've seen that style of play and it hasn't particularly worked this season. You'd want a change and some new ideas and some new voices. So whether it is, I mean, he's a long way down that list.
I mean, if
the
you
bookies have got,
Hey, I'm not convinced with Dyche. I don't think this fan base gets behind that style of football. In the same way that going back into previous times, people feared that Graham Westley and Gareth Ainsworth were always on these bookmakers' lists. I know for a fact that those two were a no-no for Gary Sweet. I just can't see how Sean Dyche is any different, and he's old. I mean, talk about a new voice, he hasn't got one, so that would be a bit of a struggle as well, wouldn't it? It doesn't strike, and I know it's only against Peterborough, but 3 hours after he left, they finally won a game of football, having not won a game of football for yonks. No, not for me.
I also listened to the Atletico Mints podcast, and if you listen to that with Bob Mortimer, there's a skit that they do there about Sean Dyche, which would be interesting to hear if you're sat in front of him.
Which you will be. Well, I hope you won't be, actually, to be fair. Yeah, Wagner, most recently at Norwich, did an okay job at Huddersfield. Very defensive again. Hey, defensive's not necessarily a bad thing if you've got a defence, which could be a problem. But I never sat there and watched his Huddersfield or Norwich sides and thought, cool, they're playing good football.
No, I just think the manager, whoever we're going to get, it's got to be the right style. It's got to be a progressive, up-and-coming manager. I think.
And as far as we're concerned, he's got to be called El Rosinio, and I don't mean Leroy. You know.
I'll go to Strasbourg and fetch him.
I'll get the train. And yes, thanks to everyone pointing out to me that it's not the warmest part of France. It's still a darn sight warmer than where we are right now. And that was kind of the point I was trying to make. But yeah, I will literally go and pick him up and bring him back if that is needed. I really do like. And a lot of you came up to me yesterday and said that he was a good shout and that you'd welcome that. Well, send your letters into Kenilworth Road and, make sure that your voice is heard. So yeah, they're the runners and riders. Time will tell as soon as an appointment is made. James and myself will be in here reacting to it. We're not expecting that appointment to be too far down the road. Paul Trollope was although he said he didn't know anything, the words that he gave off the impression that his time in charge of Luton Town started at Nottingham Forest and finished at Nottingham Forest, and I'd have no problem if that is the case. No disrespect to him. Just think we need a new manager in ASAP because these next 4 games, now that the Plymouth game's been postponed, are absolutely massive. So we'll react to that when it happens. We'll keep the preview on hold for the Preston game for as long as we possibly can. We'll still give it enough time to air so that you can watch it and give your score predictions and everything. But we'll keep tabs on the new manager situation. If we're getting vibes that manager's going to be appointed towards the middle of the week, we'll probably hold off on it until the end of the week so that we can at least react to the manager at the same time. We have got Mark on the podcast, not just to give his thoughts on yesterday's game, but because, well, Jimbo and I, we usually spend January filling our faces with beer, chocolate, and any other stuff that doesn't work out. And this guy thinks of his next challenge, and lo and behold, he's come up with one as well, Mark.
You've done me dirty there, by the way. I've not had a beer yet. I'm not doing dry January. I just haven't been nowhere near a pub.
Well, that's on you, isn't it? Not me. You watch this football club, you'll have a few beers. Trust me.
Tell you a lie. I've been on the whiskey though. That's sorry. If I was on dry January, I've buggered that up, haven't I?
It's not. You're right. It's not a beer, but it's still going to get you in the same situation. But yeah, no. Mark's been coming up with another challenge. No pedals involved this time, though. Tell all.
Yeah. So Matt, I've been asked this season at the away games: are you going to cycle? Are you going to cycle? Are you doing anything? I says no. I definitely will not be cycling to a game this season.
And you're true to your word.
I'm true to my word. So basically, I'm walking to games.
Well, naturally, yeah.
as you would. And not only am I walking to games, but the challenge is to do 1 million steps this season. Take that. Just think about that for a minute. 1 million steps.
Yeah.
I got run ragged by my kids at a soft play today. I feel like I've done 1 million steps.
So basically, I will be walking to 5 home games, which is the 20 miles from my home to Kenilworth Road. So that will be Plymouth, Portsmouth, Leeds United, Bristol City, and finishing with the last home game against Coventry City. I'll be
Frank Lampard's Coventry City.
sorry. The away games, and this one scares me. Watford away, and Burnley, which is going to be, and this is where I want everyone's help. So Burnley will be a virtual challenge. So I'm doing the first day from the ground to home. I'm doing the last day from Rochdale, but the bit in between, I'm trying to get everyone involved to do virtual miles, either on the treadmill or walking. So it isn't like the cycling where everyone just watched me and supported me from a distance. There's an opportunity for people to get involved if they want to. And finally, Derby County. So that is going to be an actual real ride, a real walk. That's going to be 6 days, 125 miles. And I've added all these up, and it comes to 1 million steps, which is completely different to what I've done before. But there's a reason for this. I think I've got the naming rights for Mad Hatter, haven't I?
If you haven't, I'll give them to you. Absolutely. I'm not even sure it's mad. I don't even know what the word is. Hold on a minute. So walking to Watford scares you, but then after that, you're going to walk to Burnley and Derby, and that's absolutely fine. Well,
it's Watford, isn't it? I just hope they're nice to me.
Well, I'm sure.
I've walked through Watford. It's no bother.
I'm sure they will be. They never turn up for the derbies anyway. You'll be absolutely fine.
So, as a lot of the question people will be asking is why you've just done 3 years of cycling, have a rest for goodness sake. But I'm passionate to support a number of charities. So Dementia are doing a fans versus dementia, which is getting people to walk to a game. I'm sure when they came up with this idea, they didn't think anyone would walk to 8 games. And so basically, during 90 minutes, 30 people in the UK develop dementia. So for those that don't know, dementia is a progressive condition that affects the brain, the memory, the thinking, the speaking, and the donations will help Admiral nurses to be able to sort of basically support the families. So there's 200 different types of dementia. So one of the reasons of choosing dementia is I lost my granddad to dementia, but also a very close friend of mine is going through that with his family, through his dad, and I want to support them. So that's why I've chosen dementia as one of the charities. But also what I want to do is support 3 local charities. As you know from my previous challenges, I've always wanted to get behind the local charities, and close to my heart with my own struggles with mental health is to try and support mental health charities. And one of them being Chums, who across Luton and Bedfordshire support children, young adults, families struggling with bereavement, trauma, disability and other mental health challenges. And for a lot of people, Chums is a lifeline for these people to improve their mental health and emotional well-being. Also Mind, everyone knows that I've supported Mind on previous challenges, and they do a lot of work in Luton, Bedford, Milton Keynes, around the area, to support people in the community through wellbeing hubs, centres, young people sanctuaries, suicide prevention, gateways. And I totally get this with my own struggles, that nobody should suffer in silence with their mental health, and that there is help and support available for everybody. So once again, I'll be supporting them. And finally, I'll be supporting the club official charity Stepping Stones, who are a Luton-based charity that are dedicated to empowering women suffering domestic abuse, anger, trauma, and help with rehabilitation from offending, parenting, supporting groups. And what they're trying to do is support life changes for a lot of women in a positive way. So all 4 charities are involved in some sort of mental health, but I've just decided that I really want to help these charities. I really want to do something different than just been cycling the last 3 years. And and if I'm being totally honest, it also helps me. It sort of gives me a focus, a drive, and it helps because I've been through my own struggles. So I just find that I just want to make a difference to these charities and to other people. So it's a little bit different to before, but as I said, there's a chance for people to get involved. There's a Just Giving page where people can donate. So so that's going to be my next few months. So if you see me crawling or walking along the road to any game, then just give me a shout. Give me something hot or cold.
I thought he was going to say, "Give me a lift" for a minute. I was like, yeah. Is that why you've come dressed up in a tracksuit? Are you ready to embark on this challenge?
No, this is the aforementioned getting run ragged around a soft play by the kids this morning. Yeah,
I thought he'd been recruited to do some steps alongside you. Really, 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 really good challenge. And this one's, I've always supported Mark on his challenges and always will do. Great guy doing great things. This one's close to my heart, though. Those who know me know that I've also got a family member who's currently suffering with dementia. So even closer to my heart, this one. So I wish you all the best with this challenge, and we will support you right the way through. The Just Giving link that Mark mentioned, that will be in the show notes, wherever it is that you've got this podcast. If you can donate, please, please, please do. This is an incredible challenge that Mark's embarking on. 1 million steps between now and the end of the season. And huge, huge, huge thing for 4 fantastic charities. So if we can get behind him, anything that you can spare really will be appreciated by these charities. If you can offer just something, that would be fantastic. And I'm sure as we go along, Mark, you'll reveal how people can come along and help and things like that.
Yeah, so just to let everyone know, the first walk is the home game against Plymouth on the 8th of February. So I've got a few weeks to prepare. So yeah, that's the first one, but I'll be keeping people updated with step counts and, more important, donations, because as I've done the challenges before, the donations really help these charities, but also the raising awareness. So anyone that goes onto the Just Giving page, you can choose which charity you want to donate to out of the 4 charities, but also there's links to their websites, there's information about what they do. It's all about raising awareness and trying to raise the profile of what they do in the community, as well as sort of getting behind Dementia UK, which is personal to me as well. So yeah, everyone is so kind and so generous over my previous challenges, and like the generosity of everyone is what's made my challenges before a success. And I'm just so grateful for the support, and anything you can help with, or if you want to join on any of them, message me. It'd be nice to have some company and not having to talk to myself for like 5, 6, 7 hours.
Incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, you like talking to yourself for 5, 6, 7 hours. That's right.
All right, that's 1-1.
No, it is. All the previous challenges have been fantastic, bonkers as well, but you've got through them and you've done them. So I've every faith that you'll be walking 1 million steps. That'd be interesting on your iPhone, and if you got one, I'm always having a look at that. I'm supposed to do, 10,000 a day? Is that the recommended? I do about 10.
And that's when you really stretch yourself.
Like we said, click on the link in the show notes, you'll get all that stuff, and then hopefully you can support.
Speaking of previous challenges, they were all chronicled in a book, which you have in front of you. Sales going well. We had you on a month ago, didn't we, when this book was coming to light. Here is the finished article, and it's on sale now.
It's on sale now. It's called Hatters, Hills and Heroes. So it's
a weighty tome. Look at that. I mean, he did cycle a lot of places, so it's gonna be. But look at that. Woo.
So it does chart the my 116 ground challenge, cycling to every ground, and the promotion season. I do talk a lot about the promotion season, the day that we'll never forget at Wembley, where Rob helped to get us promoted, and the Premier League season where I cycled to every Premier League ground. So it does talk about those two challenges, but for me, just as important, I also talk about the mental health and sort of challenges and struggles that I've been through, because I always say if it helps one person, then that's why I'm so open to talk about it. But yeah, it's got forwards written by Rob Edwards and Tom Lockyer.
So if you're missing him already, and you can get the book. Read all about it.
But basically, it's £17, and I donate to talking about mental health. So I'm making a donation to Samaritans in Luton. They're one of the oldest charities that have been running in Luton. So if you want to read about my last 18 months, 2 years, and also make a donation to charity, then you can get that. Follow me on the socials. I'll be at the Preston game with books available if you want to come see me. Card or cash is acceptable. So yeah, sales are going really well at the moment. Just thank you to everyone that's bought it and that's shown an interest in it. I hope you're enjoying reading it, and hope to sell more of them soon.
Absolutely, yeah. Grab hold of that book if you can do. Again, for good causes, really good read. And reflects on 2 wonderful seasons, doesn't it? So, all the best with the rest of the book. All the best with the challenge as well,
Thank you.
Mark. We will keep up to date. We'll have you on the podcast throughout the challenge. We'll let you drive, though. You don't need to walk to to the studio. You can drive here. That's absolutely fine. And we'll keep everyone updated with your progress throughout it. That is pretty much it for this episode of the podcast, but we're not going to leave before we've reached our target, Jimbo, 2,000 subscribers. We hit that just prior to Rob Edwards' departure. It wasn't just because he left the club. We're really, really pleased with that. We've been targeting this one for a few weeks, and nice to tick it off.
Yeah, thanks for that. Particularly, it just looks nice, a nice round number. It's gone past that, actually, so thank you for everyone that's been subscribing, because there's a lot of you that do comment regularly as well. And if you subscribe, then it helps us out. But and you'll get the notification of when the podcasts land or drop, or whatever the youngsters say these days. Yeah, it was a lovely little moment. But now I'm looking at the next target, like Mark. Got to set a next one.
There will be no walking involved in Jimbo's target, let me tell you.
Oh man, he's absolutely battering me here.
He'll batter me on the score predictions. I've got to get my own back somewhere along the line. So thanks to everyone who subscribed. If you haven't yet subscribed, please do keep subscribing. There will be, we think, a podcast dropping sometime this week about a new manager. And then, of course, we've got a preview of the Preston game ahead of a 3-game week. So podcasts are going to be coming at you thick and fast over the next fortnight, we think. And you'll get notified exactly when each one drops. As Jimbo
only if
said.
you subscribe.
Indeed, yeah. So good for us, but good for you too. So that's, thanks to everyone who's got us to 2,000. Thanks to everyone who came up to me yet again yesterday at the game. I was talking to Mark and people came up to me. I was talking to others. Really, really good to hear that you're all enjoying the podcast. Really appreciate all of your comments, particularly the one after the Rob Edwards one. Wasn't an easy one to record because I have so much respect for the guy, but ultimately I think we all agreed, as we said at the time, that it was probably the right time. That's certainly the vibes that people gave me. Thanks for watching or listening, however it is that you've consumed this podcast. Thanks to the barbershop and the lower level in Luton for hosting our studio. We really appreciate your support as always, guys. To Sean Grant and the Wolfgang for our intro music, and to Ed Smith Creative for all the designs that you see on set. Until next time, which will either be a look at who the new manager is or a look ahead to the game against Preston North End, from James, Mark and myself, come on you Hatters.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.
We're Luton people.